In an election this tight, it all comes down to the ground game, and the results of this election could come down to a few key ridings and key regions where the battle for votes is tight. There are 3 battleground provinces to watch for tomorrow night. British Columbia, 42 seats. Ontario, 121 seats. Quebec, 78 federal ridings. In BC, it's a 3-way toss-up right now and could be decisive in a late-night election. In Ontario, the Greater Toronto area, of course, remains a Liberal stronghold, but Conservatives are showing competitive signs there in those surrounding suburbs of that city. Meantime, in Quebec, the Bloc has seen a surge in support over the last couple of weeks, especially after capitalizing on a controversial question related to Bill 21 during the English language debate. But has their momentum now stalled? Then there are new battlegrounds emerging with the rise of the People's Party and the COVID crisis in Alberta. Will the failure of Premier Jason Kenney to contain the fourth wave spill over into the federal election? Let's find out. Joining me now, Catherine McKenna. She's the outgoing Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. She's in Ottawa. James Moore, the former cabinet minister under Stephen Harper's Conservative government, is in BC. And in Quebec, Tom O'Carroll, CTV's political commentator, former NDP leader. Wow. Wonderful to welcome all of you. Catherine McKenna, let me start with you. The Liberal path to victory, obviously key in Ontario and the Greater Toronto area, but even tight, by the way, in your riding of Ottawa. So what do the Liberals need to do tomorrow to find a path to victory? And as they originally wanted, a path to a majority. What are you looking for?
Well, I mean, I think the question has to be clear to folks. I mean, it's between Liberals and Conservatives, and there's a totally different vision. And I think people need to understand that. You know, there were some people that were upset. I've been in rides across Ontario, crisscrossing. They were upset about, you know, why do we need an election? But at the end of the day, elections have consequences. And so we need people to realize that we need to get the heck out of this pandemic. And we've seen with the Conservatives, I mean, the message around not requiring even their candidates to get vaccinated. I think we need that to be out. We need people to be focused on big issues like climate change and the huge difference between our plan and the Conservative plan, which would take us back in time. Right. And then we need to get people out. Like, people need to be motivated. So now it's all get out the vote.
Okay, like I get the framing. Let me go to you, James. Look, the framing of the debate, is it about the election? Is it about the vaccine? Is it about issues? But what about a path to victory? I mean, drill down, if you can, on the battleground of British Columbia, which looks to be a tight 3-way race. What are you looking for there and across the country?
Well, this will be the one province in the country that could return NDP, Liberal, Conservative, and Green members of Parliament back to Ottawa, as has happened in the last few election campaigns. And there are splits all over the place. 42 seats in the province, as you described. There are about 15 of them that I would say are up for grabs, but it's an interesting, different dynamic. You know, on Vancouver Island, Mid-Island, it can be an NDP Conservative 2-way fight. In the, frankly, wealthier parts of the Lower Mainland, it's a Liberal Conservative 2-way fight. Working class communities, 3-way fight. You know, so I look at the North Shore, West Vancouver, North Vancouver, which Stephen Harper won when we were on the brink of a majority in 2008, but then we lost in 2015. So if Conservatives look like we're going to win and we're going to govern, those are ridings that are bellwethers in the province, and they flip. I have to say, looking at the polling numbers and the dynamic on the ground in BC, I don't see any new seats for the Liberals in British Columbia, and I think they needed to win a handful of seats in BC in order to push them over the line to get a majority. So I don't think that's in the cards in this campaign. And you know, the core issue out here still is cost of living. There's the COVID overhang, but I think people are looking past that into giving the country a government that'll address their concerns and cost of living issues. And the question is whether or not the Conservatives have tipped the ballot question from COVID to leadership. Does Justin Trudeau deserve 4 more years? And is cost of living the answer and the question? And do we have the right answers? Yeah, affordability, big issue there. Tom, let's swing back. What are you looking for? Just not only in terms of path to victory, but Quebec, you know, after that, you and I have talked about it a lot, the English language debate, and suddenly the Bloc got wind in their sails. Has that stalled? What are you seeing in that province, and what are you looking for tomorrow?
No, as Catherine says, Evan, elections have consequences. Mr. Trudeau decided to throw the country into a federal general election in the 4th wave of a pandemic because he was convinced he was going to be able to get himself a majority. Well, he has to win seats in every area of the country, including Quebec. And right now, it's quite clear that he's going to lose seats in Quebec. That means he'd have to make up a heck of a lot more in other regions, whether it's Ontario or the Prairies or BC or indeed Atlantic. And there's not much room for him to do that. So yes, yes, the Bloc Québécois is resurgent. Their advance poll was glorious from all the reports I've been able to get firsthand. Way beyond what they were expecting. They've got a good ground game. They'll be out very active on election day also. So I'm expecting them to be able to poach from the Liberals, maybe even from the Conservatives. So stay tuned. There's 78 seats in Quebec, and they might have a determining effect on whether or not it's a majority or a minority.
Oh, they always do. So, Catherine, what does the Liberal path to victory look like? Because, at the beginning of the call, they got to pick up seats in Ontario, as Tom said, in Quebec. They were counting on BC. The math is looking tight, obviously. We'll wait till the outcome. In your view, as you watch tomorrow, what battlegrounds will you be looking for, Catherine McKenna, to make a Liberal path to victory?
Well, I mean, obviously Ontario is key, and there are lots of seats to be had. I mean, we've got in the GTA, I mean, there's only really one that we need to pick up, Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill. There's an opportunity there, but we got to keep the seats that we have. But I spent a lot of time in Hamilton. I think people might know I'm from the Hammer, and so there's 3 seats there that we could pick up, maybe Brantford, Brant. There's seats in Eastern Ontario, London West, Windsor West, and so there are areas we can pick up seats.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. 4.8 million people already voted, James, early in the early voting, so that's kind of interesting. What's your take on the impact? People's Party, is that a factor in terms of the blue path to victory for Aaron O'Toole? And because, look, we know Alberta's key turf for him, but do you know this area well, is the COVID situation there and the situation with Jason Kenney politically, is that spill over into the federal election for Aaron O'Toole? Does that hurt him?
Hard to see. But look, I do think people segregate provincial versus federal politics, as Mr. Mulcair will, I think, probably talk about maybe François Legault and his perception of what's in the best interest of Quebec versus what the voters may say on Monday. So I think people do separate provincial versus federal politics in their assessment of these things. With regard to the People's Party, look, People's Party voters have known that the Conservative Party is an option for a long time. And, we know from Abacus data, for example, that over 50% of Canadians say that they want to see a change in government, and they strongly hold that view. So the door to change government is there. And we also know that not COVID, not climate change, but the cost of living is the #1 issue across the country. So if with 50% of voters wanting change and the cost of living, where cost of living, the 2 big drivers are cost of a house and taxation, if those voters are not welcomed into the Conservative message and not comfortable voting to replace the Liberals with a Conservative government, then if Conservatives don't win, that's not on Maxime Bernier, that's on the Conservative Party.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tom, spoiler factors in your view. By the way, and you're in Quebec, where Max Bernier may have a shot winning the Beauce, the riding he used to have when he was a Conservative. What are you watching for in terms of the spoiler there, something that could change the path to victory?
Well, the Conservatives hold almost a dozen seats in Quebec, and that's been consistent. That's been about their range, 10 to 12 seats over the past few elections. It's what Stephen Harper called his blue arrow, going from the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, northeast of Quebec City, all the way down to the Beauce on the Quebec-Maine border. And it's stayed pretty loyal. Beauce, I am told, according to the most recent inside polling, is now outside the reach of Maxime Bernier, which is interesting. And I think the confirmation of that is the fact that Mr. Bernier has decided he's going to spend election evening in Saskatchewan instead of in Quebec or in his riding. So I think he's aware of that. They're not much of a spoiler effect here, but the Bloc's moving in and boosting its numbers could actually not only hurt Justin Trudeau's Liberals, it could also play havoc with some of those 10 or 12 ridings that the Conservatives were hoping to maintain, and any hope that they had of adding to that column.
Wow, this is lots of dynamics at play. I think Catherine McKenna said it best. There's a lot of ridings up for grabs, so we'll find out what happens tomorrow. Catherine McKenna, James Moore, Tom Mulcair, great to have the 3 of you. Take care.
All the best, Evan.
Thanks.